Hey all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host. Today I'm going to have a special guest, Mr. Kevin Sandridge of the BBQ Beat podcast and blog. I'll be right back with Kevin Sandridge.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey all, I want to welcome back Inkbird Products as a sponsor of the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Inkbird makes one of the best Wi-Fi 4 Pro barbecue thermometers that I've ever seen out there. The BBQ 4T is 100% rechargeable USB 4 Pro Wi-Fi enabled barbecue thermometer, and it usually sells for under $100. Check out the link below for the Inkbird Wi-Fi BBQ 4T 4 Pro barbecue thermometer. Welcome back, Inkbird Products. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and today I have a really great guest, one that I've been wanting to get on for a while. I have Mr. Kevin Sandridge of the BBQ Beat blog and podcast. Kevin's been doing his BBQ Beat blog and podcast for a long time now. Kevin, welcome. Thanks for being on, and go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me all about you.
Oh, thank you so much, Darren. I can't thank you enough, actually. And it's, guys, I want to put this out there. Darren and I are not geographically far from one another. And so hopefully that means once all this crazy Corona stuff stops, we can actually get together and do some cooking, and that'll be very, very enjoyable. But yeah, I started the BBQ Beat blog 4 or 5 years ago, and then morphed it into more of a podcast effort, and just really use it as a platform to interact with people who I'm interested in learning more about, seeking to sort of broaden the scope a little bit. Barbecue means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It could be hot and fast, it could be low and slow, it can be any kind of grilling, really, depending on where you're coming from. And so I go everywhere from competition barbecue stuff all the way to one of my favorite episodes, which was talking with John Jackson out of Milledgeville, Georgia. And John runs Comfort Farms, which is an acute crisis center for veterans based on the model of farming, getting veterans who are struggling with some, PTSD issues and associated sort of after effects of being deployed, and letting them be mission centric and oriented with farming, right? Because there's no day off with farming. And so that's really, my purpose is to just get the stories down and talk with people and do my little bit to help spread the good news of what's going on with any kind of, live fire cooking or anything associated with it.
Yeah, that's great. That's similar to me when I started putting my whole fire and water cooking thing together. I started out with a Facebook group and just trying to, teach people what I've been learning and kind of spread and help, centralize the information so people could find it easier. And it looks like that's what you started out with. And I'm going to kind of go to your blog here so people can see it and find it. But this is your BBQ Beat website. And I guess you kind of, like you said, you started out as a blog. What got you interested in barbecue? Did you start out as a competition cook? Did you just start out as a fan of competitions? Did you happen to just watch the barbecue pitmasters and then get excited about it? Or a lot of people have. That's
Oh yeah, absolutely. Barbecue Pitmasters launched a lot of competition barbecue teams. Some of those are still killing it out there, today, or at least, as recently as we've had our last round of competitions. But yeah, for me, it's been more of a fanboy experience, a little bit of a barbecue groupie. I wanted to up my own cooking skills and my own game when it came to barbecue. And then I reached out to some local folks here as I started out. Chad Ward with Whiskey Bent Barbecue. He and his team were on the amateur side of things. I went out to an event in Bartow. I think it was the Bartow Barbecue and Bluegrass Festival. That was a great event. They were real kind and brought me into their camp and showed me around, kind of gave me a behind the scenes look at how they prep their proteins and some of the ingredients they use. That was my first introduction to the combination of Blues Hog Original and Blues Hog Tennessee Red as a kind of a go-to competition sauce mixture. And we got into, a situation where from there we just broadened the circle, right? I got to know more teams. I got to sort of, spread my interest levels out to different areas, and just, moved on into the blog experience. Anyone who's ever operated a blog knows that it can be quite time consuming. And you can only really write so many, top 10 barbecue sauces, or, the
exactly.
clickbait kind of stuff. And I just like, my heart wasn't in it. And I thought, what do I like to do? Well, I like to talk is what I like to do.
Right.
So I just started using that mindset and morphing it into the podcast platform as a way to keep information coming into my sort of barbecue beat presence, but also to make sure that I am constantly trying to do what I can to give back. I mean, a lot of the people involved with barbecue, they support a lot of charity work. They give of themselves a lot. You've got Operation Barbecue Relief. There's just so many avenues where, I think people take for granted that barbecue is going to be there, especially when times are down. And it's, I don't think I have to tell you, any restaurant operation operates on a thin margin. If you want to see rice paper thin margins, go talk to a barbecue restaurant, right? And especially one that's trying to do things, kind of with like, wood smoke only, no gas assist, just trying to like keep things as authentic as possible. One of the best in Central Florida. If you haven't been out there, I recommend everyone head out to see what Chad and Amy Kreiderman are doing at Kreiderman's Barbecue in Cocoa, Florida. They also have a Melbourne, Florida location. 2 massive offset, Texas style sort of propane tank smokers. I think they're like, I want to say they're at least 1,000 gallons each, and they're doing great work. But it's not easy, and they have to cultivate a staff that knows what they're doing and keep things going. And so, yeah, like, so that's really been it for the most part. I started as a fan of competition barbecue, and then I got to a point where how many times can we hear? I didn't want every podcast episode to be how do you cook your 4 meats for competitions? You know what I mean? Because
exactly, yeah,
there's a lot of repetition there. I mean, obviously, there are nuanced differences that earn grand champions for some and mid-pack awards for others. But yeah, so just to keep it a little bit fresh and interesting, I try to branch it out as much as I can.
And that's kind of like with me. I love barbecue. That's one of my first loves. I've been cooking it for a long time. I never competed or anything like that, but I loved watching, going to the competitions and watching them on, watching barbecue pit masters and reading and trying out stuff in my backyard as well. But I also love I'm an overall cook. I like to cook different things. That's why I kind of started this, mixing it with sous vide and kind of trying to show people that they don't have to do what, that they see on a barbecue pit masters.
Right.
Johnny Triggs ribs for competition are not something you want to eat every day, because they're made for one bite, and people don't understand that a lot of the times. And whenever I have one of the big competitors, like when I had Malcolm on, and when I had Meathead or some of these others that have been in the competition side for a while, they're the first to tell you that that's not what you want to cook in your backyard, is what you see them.
Well, it's not what they cook in their backyard.
Exactly. Yeah. It's eating barbecue and competition barbecue are totally different. And I think people get their, don't really realize that until you kind of tell them. And that's one of the things I like too, is that, people, I see, you can watch a lot of YouTube channels and people, tell you what they really do, but then again, they're going to hold back some because they don't want to put their everything that they do. They'll tell, it's like Harry Sue. I like to watch a lot of his videos, and I've had him on the podcast before too. He'll tell you 99% of what he does, but there's that 1% he holds back for competitors when he's in the competition, or everybody would be doing it. So
yeah, well, and even even when you take classes and you're paying $700-800 to sit for 2 days and learn from someone, you know, one of the best classes I ever went to was at the Whiskey Bent location when it was on South Florida Avenue, Whiskey Bent Barbecue. Um, Heath Riles was there from Heath Riles Barbecue, formerly of Victory Lane Barbecue, formerly of Boar's Night Out Barbecue. One of the winningest barbecue champions there is today. I mean, this is a guy that'll roll up to the Murfreesboro 17th Street event, which is a combination KCBS and Memphis Barbecue Network event, and win grand champion in both that weekend.
Mhm.
He's laying out his entire program in that class in a way that he literally is holding nothing back. And when he says it to the class, and I believe him when he says it, the trick is execution, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, can you do everything? It's like people who are starting to learn how to handle, you know, handguns, right?
Or even drive a car.
Or drive a car. Like situations where you are in a controlled environment is one thing. Situations where stuff's going sideways and you got to figure it out on the fly. Oh, come on now. That's a whole other deal, right? And so that's what Heath will tell you. It's like, if you can roll up to me cooking my program side by side on a given weekend and beat me, go for it, man. I'm going to give you everything I got. I'm going to show you what I do. But that's just it, man. Like, you know, temps are going to spike. Something's going to go in a way that you don't expect. You're going to have to compensate, and, you know, triage is everything. And how good are you when the chips are down, right? And that's when you and I both have had podcast episodes where we're recording with someone and all of a sudden something fritzes out and we got to, or before we're getting ready and oh man, and you better have 2 or 3 options, right? Because and again, we were just speaking about this, like some guests you get one shot.
Yeah.
Right. And it's super awkward to try to ask for a redo. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Or, you know, that's why I don't like doing live podcasts. I know that, you know, the Barbecue Central, you know, Greg likes to do his live, but you know, he's been doing it for almost 12 years.
Greg's
now.
A pro. Like he's a G, man. He's
but
OG
I can't
barbecue.
do that,
That's right.
It's
cool.
A lot of things. And I'm going back to the barbecue stuff, but even when I talk to Harry, Sue, and Malcolm, it's, you know, everybody is all about you know, sometimes it's, you know, what equipment do you use and what spices and this do you use? And, you know, even Harry says it's not about that stuff. It's not about the equipment or the seasonings. I mean, they play some role, but 90% of it is who's doing it. And then the experience they have and the ability, like you said, to pull stuff out of the fire. And, you know, something, you know, they drop their chicken on the ground, you know, on the way to the judging, you know, what are they going to do now? You know, so pulling it out.
Yeah. Like one of the coolest things I learned was, like, if you overshoot, so like, you know, on the money muscle part of a pork butt where they're trying to cut those little medallion slices off opposite where the bone is. Well, if it gets overcooked, it gets a little mushy. One of the things that they'll do is they'll separate it, wrap it real tight in a saran wrap, put it in a Ziploc bag, and plunge it in some ice water in a cooler to tighten it up. Yeah, like I never would have thought to do that. Right. I would have turned in fall apart, mushy money muscle. That's how it would have gone down.
And a lot of people do. That's why, but that's why these guys are, you know, winners, because they've been doing it for years. But the guy walking in off the street on his first or second or third competition sometimes hasn't learned those secrets yet. So.
Yeah. And then you have the IBCA guys down in Texas, right? Like that barbecue will sit around for a long time. The episode I did with Aaron Leslie of, out of Texas, he talked about, you know, your chicken or your ribs or your brisket, it's going to be sitting around for an hour or two while it goes through the judging paces. And you almost want to overcook your stuff because as it cools, it's going to tighten up a little bit. And just, again, like if you're not learning those tips and those secrets from people, you're kind of out of luck when it comes to trying to go for it yourself on the first go. But yeah.
Now, have you competed much yourself at all?
Only as an assistant. Like I don't have a team. In recent memory, there was a bit of a gauntlet I ran one weekend. Matt Barber down here out of Bartow, Florida, with Hot Guachulas, champion barbecue pitmaster. We had an FBA, Florida Barbecue Association event on a Saturday in Davenport, Florida, and then right down the road, down 27, in I want to say, I think it was Frostproof. There was a KCBS competition on Sunday. So I helped him that weekend. And I mean, I basically cleaned stuff as fast as I possibly could and got out of the way a lot is what really went down. But I was not going to, I was happy I didn't do anything that jeopardized him. I think he placed in the top 10 in the FBA event. He won grand champion in the KCBS event. So I was like, all right, I had nothing to do with that win, but I didn't detract from it either. So that was
you
good.
helped. You stayed out of his way, so you helped.
That's right.
You clean stuff. So
yes,
that's important. Cleaning.
There's
up
a
stuff.
word for my role, but I won't say it on the air. So, yeah.
Grunt. You were a grunt.
Yeah, that's right. That's much better. Yeah.
Now, do you get to go out too? Do you travel around? Did you go to the one in Lakeland here that happened? Right before everything went to hell, the one that was here at the Lakeland Linder Airport.
Yeah, Pig Fest every year is a great one. I try to get to that every year. They used to have another one years past. It was Pigs Fly South, I think in December. That was a trick to have one in December. But that was back when the Lakeland Pig Fest was happening at the Tiger Stadium, Joker Marchant up North Lakeland. But yeah, that's a great event. It's always nice because you get to see people from outside the state that kind of roll in for that. And I have done there's only a handful, 5 or 6, if you're lucky in a given year, of the KCBS events every year. And so if you I wanted to hit my milestone as a judge, as a master judge for both the Florida Barbecue Association and KCBS. Well, to do it in KCBS, if you don't want to take forever, you have to go outside the state, like to Georgia. I've been up to North Carolina. I've done events, the great Colorado State Championship they have every year in Frisco. It's about 10,000 miles up in the mountains. It's in the area where Breckenridge and all the ski resorts and stuff are. That's a great event. So yeah, it's been nice to travel a little bit, and not just for competitions. Again, I mentioned Comfort Farms. Every year in January, they do a traditional sort of taking down of some of the animals that they raised. And it's called a boucherie event. You may have heard of that term before, but it's a great event. It really puts the context of where your food comes from forefront. And again, it's heavily, attended and operated by veterans, which is nice. And then area chefs from Atlanta, really high-end folks come in and they're all cooking over live fire. It's a great event. I highly recommend you guys, once we can get to where we're doing this stuff again, check it out, because not only is it for a good cause, but it really leaves you, I think, with a deeper appreciation of what it takes to put food on the table too. So.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, I think, I grew up on a farm for a little while when I was younger in upstate New York. So, like you said before, that, when you're on a farm, there's no days off. There's no, I'll sleep until 10 o'clock. I mean, you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier, right. Doing something. You're, milking the cows, or you're chasing the chickens around, you're feeding the pigs, or, and if you happen to be growing crops, you're out there, fertilizing, water, and you're doing something all the time. I mean, there's always something that you have to do. So
yes, sir.
It's not as easy as people think, but
yeah, no, absolutely.
But knowing where your food comes from is definitely a big deal. And that's why, I actually, every once in a while, I have a buddy of mine who raises cattle here locally. And at least once a year, I'll buy, a cow from him, and just,
nice.
I got a big freezer in my garage, and, I buy it directly from him because I know where it came from. I know how it was raised. I know that, it's not cheaper than buying it at the grocery store by any means, because, the way they raise their cows is just in a big mill, but I feel a lot better getting it from somebody like that, for sure. So,
well, and you're contributing directly to his ability to sustain that operation, which I'm sure he
Exactly.
appreciates.
Yeah, and it's definitely, like I said, I know where it came from. I know it's fresh. I know he didn't, use any weird chemicals or hormones or anything that he's not supposed to be doing. So it's always good to know where your food comes from, for sure. So,
Absolutely.
what have you learned over the years? I mean, I know that's probably a hard question. You'd probably fill up, 5 or 6 episodes of that. But what are like some of the top 5 things that you learned over the years about competition cooks and barbecue competitions in general that people might not know from watching, barbecue pit masters and all that?
Well, right off the gate, one of the things you touched on, Darren, is you mentioned Harry Sue. Harry Sue won grand championships on a regular basis cooking out of 2 Weber Smoky Mountain cookers, right? I mean, these are sub $300 or right at these days cookers. They're not the sexiest thing on the market. They're not these big gravity fed units that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Um, and I don't even know if he had much in the way of a trailer. I think it was a vehicle and maybe some pop-up tents, and he was just killing it. And starting out of the gates, it's kind of the same advice that Aaron Franklin gives people when they want to maybe start a restaurant venture. He was really purposeful in starting out with as little debt as possible. Like don't think you need a Lang's, or not a Lang, but even a Lang smoker. I mean, you can start out with the Weber Smoky Mountains. You don't need to go out and spend big bucks to compete. And really, another thing is, I believe more competition cooks that want to get better should judge more. Take the class, but that's not the end. That's actually the beginning, because the class is, again, it's a controlled environment. What you want to do is get into multiple judging environments as a competitor, and you want to make sure that you are listening to what the judges are talking about. You can pick up on trends, things that they'll always say, oh, well, I knew this entry was going to be bad right when I looked at it. And I'm not saying that's a fair approach as a judge, but it's the kind of stuff that happens with judges sometimes. And you start to learn how, again, to plan your cooking profile and program around what judges are going to experience. But you don't know that until you're back there talking with more judges. On the flip side of that, real quick, if I may, I would argue that more judges need to get out and talk with more teams. What happens is a judging event is over and they go home. So, they get there at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, things start, they're done by 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then they jet. And what a missed opportunity, right? You could go out and teams are super friendly. Almost, I can't even count the times. So maybe once or twice where it seemed like a team wasn't really interested in talking, but they're appreciative of the fact that you as a judge want to learn more, and they will talk with you, and you can really, I don't know, I think deepen your appreciation for competition barbecue and your enjoyment of the events you go to. So as far as meats are concerned, you can do well in chicken, ribs, and pork without breaking the bank. Unfortunately, when it comes to brisket, so many people have been cooking the higher end Prime
Wagyu,
Plus,
yeah.
Wagyu, A9, yeah, stuff that it's sort of started to shape the mindset of the judges, I think, when they're sitting in there and tasting the brisket that comes through. And if anyone's ever tasted competition brisket, it's not anything at all like what you may have had at like a traditional Texas style brisket
Right.
restaurant, like not even close. And that's fine. It is what it is. And competitors will tell you that they're not cooking you their favorite recipes. They're cooking what they think the judges have been conditioned to like. And
Right.
And it's sort of a chess match. It's more of a game. It's not, hey, let's cook the best barbecue. It's let's cook the best barbecue that the judges are expecting to eat.
Well, and like, I said about, with Johnny Triggs ribs, it's that one bite. You want to, you don't have a whole rack of ribs to, get their interest. It's that one bite they're taking,
right.
because they're going to take a bite of everything. So
Yeah.
they're taking that one bite. They're judging everything they can on that one bite. That's why you see, when somebody's doing a competition brisket, they got all sorts of injections they're doing. They're making sure, they're patting, putting the rub on just right, making sure they trim it perfectly. I mean, you sit there and watch, them trim a brisket and throw out half the meat, and you're like, holy cow, what are you doing? It's a Wagyu, like you said. It's a Snake
Yeah.
River Farms, gold Wagyu that cost them $250. And you're
Yeah,
like,
they're using terms like aerodynamic,
yeah,
shaping. Like, and it's like
right.
they're trying to launch an airplane here. It's like it's
And
crazy.
yeah, it's so it's definitely a different ballpark than what most
Yeah.
people would actually cook in their backyard. But what what do you think about with like competitions, if they did something like what the SCA does, where they actually provide the meat and everybody's on an even keel, because that's what happens with the steak cook-offs. They provide the ribeye steaks, so everybody has.
Yep.
They pull from the
I love
pile.
it.
They have to draw their numbers and everything, so they get
Yeah.
to pick. But still, they're not having to being able to bring in a gold Wagyu and then somebody stuck with a prime, because that's all you can afford.
or
Yeah,
the
briskets.
Walmart Select, the
Yeah,
Excel
the
Walmart
no
Select.
roll
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
GFS.
yeah. I love it. I love the idea. I wish we could find a way to make it happen more often. Sterling Ball with Big Papa Smokers has run guinea pig events. He calls them for several years, and that's what he does. You sign up. Typically, they can range. Some of them I think are more. They might be a little more invite only, but others are open to whoever wants to sign up, and your fee covers the meats, and you are operating on more of a level playing field. Yeah, I like that idea. I've heard something even more extreme. I was talking with a guy out of Tasmania, and his name is Rowan, and he at the time was involved with the Tasmanian Barbecue Association, and they did an event where I don't know, maybe there's 15 or 20 individuals who are going to be cooking this event, and the way they worked it is there were however many number of competitors there was an equal number of different kinds of smokers, grills, and cookers. Like no one grill, smoker, or cooker was like any other one there.
Mhm.
So we're talking little electric smokers all the way up to offset smokers that are wood burning only, right? And what you did was, as a competitor, you drew a number out of a hat, and that number corresponded with a certain cooker, and you had to be ready to cook your proteins on the number you drew. And I think, to be fair, they gave the worst cuts to the person that ended up with like the best cooker,
Wow.
but everyone was more or less cooking the same proteins, but they were having to figure out possibly a way of cooking that they weren't familiar with, right?
It sounds like a Chopped episode or
A
something
little
like
bit. It's like you're pulling your cooker out of the basket instead of just the proteins. Yeah.
that. Right. That'd be kind of fun, though. I mean,
I mean, that's I, I refuse to ever wear any kind of clothing item that says Pitmaster on it, because I'm not one. I know what it takes to really, in my mind, wear that badge of honor, so to speak, with some legitimacy, and I'm not there. An event like that I just described to you, if you can win one of those, yeah, you get to wear that. You get to tattoo that on your body. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's crazy. What do you think of getting back to the judging? Because you've said you've been a judge for a while for both KCBS and the regional events and stuff like that. And I know I've talked to the guy from the SCA as well, and then
Brett Galloway.
yeah, Brett, and he
Yeah.
was on that show, and we kind of talked about the judging of the state competitions, because it seems they get kind of locked into into like a bot. They get tied up into some of these things. Like we talked about the using the grill grates to get the grill marks. That is such a big deal that on the state cook-off competition is the grill marks. It doesn't really mean that it's always going to be the best tasting steak, but it's such a big thing that it's if you don't cook it on a PK grill with grill grates, you're probably
At
not
least
gonna.
use grill grates. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's
It's like it's formulaic, right? And like anything, I mean, look at, to some extent, I don't know if you could put this to the test with any other kind of competition event, maybe even like auto racing, right? Like at some point, a lot of the vehicles are going to start looking like a lot of the other vehicles, because those are the aerodynamics and the weight ratios that are winning, and the pack just sort of gravitates to that style or that method of of cooking in the case of SCA. And I mean, yes, me, I am a cast iron skillet steak guy all day long. I want the browning to be that my artifact to be across the whole surface of the steak. Grill marks are pretty, but I'm greedy. I want more of that flavor
right.
everywhere,
Yeah,
right? And
that's
so,
me too. And
but that's not going to win you an event at SCA.
right, and that's
And it
because they take aesthetics into it.
they do, and it
It's a
should.
big part of it. Now, but getting back to you being a judge and
Okay.
you attending a lot of these competitions, and you got
Mm-hmm.
some high caliber guys at all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got to be sitting there and tasting this one brisket, and then you taste the next one. How do you differentiate?
It's a fine line sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
got to be, because a lot of these guys are using the same injections, or using the same different kind
Mhm.
of rub, mixtures, and I mean, where
The
do you
tiebreaker for
go?
me, honestly, Darren, the tiebreaker for me always is tenderness, right? Um, you're going to have entries that have a similar flavor to them, perhaps, but and I, I have had times. Look, I mean, you're not limited in FBA or KCBS judging to only one perfect score across the board. Like, if I've had cases where the chicken entries come through, and out of the 5 or 6 entries we're presented with, 2 of them got 10s from me, top scores for me, let's say 10s in FBA, 9s in KCBS, on taste, tenderness, and presentation. They were just, they weren't maybe the exact same, but they did well in my mind in all categories. And I think that's one of the things that I think people run into a problem with, is that sometimes, especially new judges, they tend to score very low, and it's like they're reserving that 10 for the entry that's going to make them feel like they've just entered some ethereal plane of existence, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, it's, again, I think understanding more about the process helps, how the food is being prepared, the timelines involved, and are they hitting the mark? Again, tenderness for me always wins, and I think guys like Iowa Smoky D's, Darren Worth, he'll tell you that he wins like he wins because he's got tenderness down. The flavor, as long as the flavor of the barbecue is not offensive,
Not off-putting.
there's not, yeah, I mean, as long as there's not one component, like it's not too spicy, it's not too sweet, it's not too, as long as it's like the best average barbecue you can cook, if you nail tenderness, you're going to do well. And I will say this, FBA has a judging system that goes to 10, and it goes in 5-point increments, which makes it nice in those cases where you're like, man, I don't want to give it a 9, but I can't quite give it a 10. 9.5 it is. You know what I mean? And it seems like, well, how would you possibly know if it's a decimal, a 0.5 degrees of difference? But that's why it's there, because you don't want to take them down a whole level. So it's like
how long did it take you to get your judging chops down? I mean, I know when your first event, you're definitely not an expert, and like you said, you're talking to the other judges to kind of get their experience, and you're going out and talking to some of the competitors that have been doing it a while. How long does it usually take for somebody who just starts judging to be able to say, I'm a good judge now?
I was probably a good 10 events in before I started to feel like I'm getting to feel for this, right? Like, and and I think that's important. You just kind of let it come to you, and you get used to what other people are saying. You understand like what to look for. Again, I made it a habit of taking some barbecue classes myself, some competition classes, so I understood, you know, where the cooks were coming from, how that met with the regulations. You know, they say that a rib should, you know, when you bite into the side of a rib, it should leave a sort of rounded, you know, bite mark, and the bone should quickly turn sort of dry from air exposure, you know, and there shouldn't be a lot of like moist, like the meat shouldn't slide off the bone and so on and so forth. I mean, you start there, and then you just kind of do your best to try to make sure you're always adhering to those parameters. Now, if I bite into but I try to give teams two chances on ribs. I'll take a bite from each side of the rib, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's meat enough on each side. Sometimes they cut them where the meat's sitting on top of the rib, even with like a St. Louis spare, and they cut the sides pretty thin. So in that case, it's a little tricky, but I try to act as much in good faith as I can. And if there's an error on the side of anything, it's on the side of the team, right? If I'm not sure to give them in KCBS a 9 or an 8, and I really can't make up my mind and I'm torn, I'm going to give them the 9. You know what I mean? Because why shoot to the negative if I couldn't make the decision? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, great. Well, I'm glad we talked about that. I mean, I wasn't expecting to spend a lot of time on that, but it's always interesting to get somebody's perspective that's been a judge for a while, because I like I said, I've been to a lot of, you know, competition barbecues, and one of the things that also gets me is how much they actually, you know, selling the barbecue to the spectators is part of it, you know, where, you know, you go there on a Friday, like, you know, we went to Lakeland, we went to Friday, and everybody's just selling barbecue.
Yeah.
They're doing the ancillary little competitions, you know, the, you know, side dishes and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, they got 2 or 3 guys working those, but they're busting their butt selling barbecue to the public. So
yeah, and there will be big events like Lakeland Pig Fest or any of the really big name events. I would say, okay, like you're good. You're going to get some good food as an audience attendee. The smaller events, honestly, man, I tell friends of mine, look, let me know if you're coming, because then I'll get some of the competitors to set some stuff aside that you can buy from them, because some of the vended products that you can buy, it's not that great. And I wouldn't get it myself. So, yeah.
That walks into something else. So do you like to cook your own barbecue? Do you go out to eat barbecue? I know, you know, some people that have restaurants and stuff you probably go to, but let's say, do I see you at Mission Barbecue every once in a while, or Sonny's, or?
I've never been to Mission. I grew up with Sonny's. I'm a Sonny's kid. I think Sonny's hit a low point in the late 80s, early 90s, where they were cooking everything out of sort of a cafeteria and sort of shipping it out in bags. Brian Morosco with Bull Rush Barbecue here took over their barbecue operations some time ago and got them cooking fresh every day again. And, you know, it's when you're looking at the kind of volume that they have to contend with, as far as, you know, when people are full on going out to restaurants, it's tough to keep everything at a really high level, but I think they do a pretty good job, and it's a fair price for a good meal. And so I'm always going to fly the Sonny's flag. If I haven't had barbecue in a little while at a restaurant, and I'm probably not going to go to just any barbecue place. Like I said, Sonny's, they have a special, like, you know, hometown feel for me. But the other place, let's see, you've got Polk City Barbecue, run by Joel Van. They do a great job. I would go there anytime. I recommend friends to go there anytime. Not only will they do a good job for you, if anything ever goes in a way that you don't like you don't enjoy your meal, they'll go above and beyond to make sure it's right, either that visit or the next time. So you can't ask more than that. And then I mentioned Kreiderman's, as far as like on the sort of Atlantic coast, you know, Chad and Amy, those guys are doing great. But other than that, I'd rather just cook it myself than eat meh barbecue, because I know I can do a a pretty good job. And if I mess it up, that's one thing. If I'm paying someone money and they mess it up, it's gonna go over a little worse. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. It's I'm the same way. I've been to Mission and Mission's not bad, but one of the things I don't like going is spending $19 on a sampler plate that, they just give you a little splotch of everything, and then, you're still hungry after you're done and you just drop $20 and
yeah,
you know
yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. You go out to Kreiderman's and get a sampler plate, you're gonna drop $50
yeah. But then
because,
again, you can't get a wallow out of there, I'm sure,
but
too.
and the quality is
Better. Yeah.
up here. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that's not every day, every week even, like, and it's someone told me once, like, the way to judge barbecue or any food really, but at a restaurant is h- how far would you drive to eat it?
Hmm.
Like, would you drive 50 miles to eat that barbecue? You
Right.
know, if the answer is yes, it's probably pretty okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd drive the hour and a half plus to Kreiderman's anytime. So
And do you put your judging goggles on when you go out, or do you?
no, because it's a different deal, right? Like, now I am critical. I pay the money, so I'm like, so I I will tell you, and Chad will tell you, like, their sausage 2 years ago had a little bit too much of a crumble to it when you bit through the casing. And they make their own, beef sausage. Maybe it's got a little pork in there too. But it wasn't. I don't know. The binder wasn't quite right, and he'll tell you. He's like, he did research, and now when you go, in my opinion, it's a much better product, right? And I give him honest feedback, and that's all you can do. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You're like,
Right.
hey
Yeah.
man, like, I really enjoyed this and this. I did find this. Like, I don't know if it was an off day. He's like, yeah, we're working on that. We're trying to get, and that's just it, man. Like, I think talking to, like, if you're at a place where you can actually talk to the people doing the cooking, like, especially if it's more of a, I guess they call it like craft or artisanal, or like, they're trying to do things in a sort of from scratch mindset.
Hmm.
They appreciate the honest feedback, right?
Right.
And I think that's you never have to be, as a guest at a restaurant like that, ashamed of letting them know. I think they want the feedback because no one,
Yeah.
yeah,
But like you
operates
said,
without
it's the way
feedback.
they do it. You do it too. You don't go, you don't be a
Yeah,
Karen and yell
like,
at them.
don't go on
Yeah.
Yelp and start screaming about how you hated the food.
Right.
That's just not a good look. Like, go
Yeah.
be an adult, go talk to the people with your actual words. It's okay.
I worked in restaurants my first probably 15 years in
Okay, so
working. So, until I was up to like 25 or so, I worked in
yeah,
restaurants. So, I know how
you know the deal.
when you're back there and cooking, and you're like you said, it's like when you're selling barbecue at the competitions, they're just flinging stuff out there. It
Yeah,
ain't what they're doing that, taking to the judges in little boxes. They're flinging it out
right.
there. And sometimes you get a good one, sometimes you get a bad one, and you're just trying to get as many out as you can. So it's a little bit different when you're under pressure. So that's definitely a thing. So what do you think, kind of get towards the end here, but I want to talk to you about, we talked about barbecue pit masters before and how that kind of changed the way people looked at their backyards and barbecue, and got a lot more people involved and excited, and not just barbecue pitmaster, but even mix that in with Chopped and some of the the Food Network shows
Yeah,
and Emeril
yeah.
Lagasse and all that. Cooking overall, people have gotten a lot more interested in it, with all these TV shows. And how do you think that's changed how people look at their backyard or cooking outdoors anymore?
I think there's been a little bit of a renaissance, man. Like, if you look post World War II, a lot of GIs coming home, like Hasty Baked Grills, they came about because there was a desire by their founder to, as when he was away fighting, to come back home and be able to have the kind of barbecue he had been dreaming about eating again, and formulating a plan to make a product that's going to allow the family to gather together and cook and enjoy their products. I mean, Weber started out the same way, and I think over time, especially through the 80s, like the late 70s, early 80s, we went into the TV, the hardcore presence of a shift between like, the TV dinner to the microwave dinner,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
and like, and
Fast
just
food,
get it. Yeah.
McDonald's
Oh,
burgers and all
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And go, go,
Bucket of
go. And
chicken.
yeah. Oh, exactly. And, I will still contend, by the way, that although probably much less healthy for you, McDonald's fries in 1980 were way better than they are today. I still love them. They're fine. They have their place. But anyway, I digress. But I will say that I think people are getting into doing more themselves. It's just like everything else, like DIY everything, right? Home and garden television, like the whole deal. Um, I will be very honest. I've gone much further in trying to cook barbecue for myself than I have been trying to up my handyman home repair
I'm
skills.
with you. I'm with you on that. I tell my wife, I am not a handyman. Every time she says, "Can you fix that?" I'm like, "No, that's why we call people and pay them."
That's why we have a phone. That's right.
right.
That's funny.
That guy, we got to give that guy some work so he can
That's
feed his
right.
family.
That's right. We're helping the economy here.
That's right.
But yeah, it's a deal where I think people are really trying to maybe also purposely slow down in their hectic lives. And I think cooking helps you do that when you want to do it through a process that requires steps that go beyond open bag, push button, wait for time to be done. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
even I mean, look at even in how food is created or cooked for most kids in schools these days. It's, the favorite tool of most school cafeterias, or the one that's most widely used, is the box cutter, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And and I get it. It's like, we got schools in our area here. It's got 3,400 students. Feed those in 3 hours. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? So back to your point, I think people are really gravitating to that. You're seeing a lot of people have been interested in like those kudu grills, more of the Brazilian style stuff, fire tables. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I like to always talk about with people, especially people that are in the business like we are. Is in the last 10 or 12 years, the amount of innovation that has been out there on these grills, um, it's just amazing to me. You start putting in the Wi-Fi temp controllers and pellet grills, and now you got the Masterbuilt's got the charcoal gravity fed for $500. I mean, it's not just the innovation, but also trying to get innovation in those lower price points that make
Yeah.
it more affordable for people to actually
Yep.
I got a Kamado Joe out on my patio, but not a lot of people can
Great,
afford
great grill.
but not a lot of people can afford $1,000 grill on their patio.
True enough.
And there's plenty of people that go to Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart and go to their outdoor section and buy the stuff that you can find on Alibaba all day long. But even those grills are starting to get a little bit more different. Like I was looking today because I'm going to shoot a video for my or for my YouTube channel talking about that kind of stuff. And one of them was, like you said, the Hasty Bake. And one of the things I like about the Hasty Bake is that it's adjustable platform.
Yeah, it's almost like an internal Santa Maria kind of deal.
Exactly.
Up and down. Yeah.
And that's been around since 1948. But now you'll see that in a lot of these cheaper grills that that you can get at Walmart or Home Depot, that some of these have that same type of concept that's been around for a long time, but now they're starting to innovate. They go, what else can we do? You got all these different companies that are, what else can we do to make these grills and outdoor cooking apparatus easier and more excited for the people to go out and get them. The flat top griddles is another thing the last couple of years has really exploded.
Yeah, Blackstone was
Blackstone,
big.
Camp
The
Chef,
front of that Camp Chef. Yep.
You got Char Grillers got their own now. I mean, everybody's coming out with one because they're getting so popular. That outdoor space is getting, I know because I got 5 cookers out of my,
It gets crowded quick.
It's starting to get crowded, and they're all different.
I know it.
Not like I got 5 Weber kettles out there. I've got 5 totally different cookers out there. So
yeah.
And what do you think that's gonna, do? I mean, I just every year. Do you ever get to go to like the HB, the home hearth and
I
patio
have not
shows?
been, but I have several. Craig Tabor, Chris Gentry, some Josh Tahan. So Craig has been around the grilling world for a long time. He is about to actually open up his own grill store outside of the Atlanta area. But he's been big, and he is a pit master. He knows how to cook on pretty much everything. Gentry's got a store out of Orlando, Florida, Gentry's Barbecue, and they're he's killing it. You mentioned Wi-Fi, like the Yoder smokers, right? Like the built-in, everything, the temp control, the monitoring, the measurement, and Josh Tahan deals with a lot with the Uni pizza ovens, right? So all those guys have been at those kind of events, and I think, and you're not kidding, like everyone's trying to find the magic sauce, right? That special mix of what the customer wants. And man, grills, especially pellet grills with all the internals and the measurement tools, and it's like trucks, right? Like back in the 1970s, a truck was a truck. Now
Right.
it's a cowboy Cadillac, right? Now it's got
Yeah.
all the bells and whistles and all the stuff. And grills are starting to be that way to some extent as well. I've never gotten super excited about Wi-Fi and temp mapping. I don't need to look at the data of my last 20 cooks. I don't need that. I'm out by the cooker because I like to cook. Beer in hand. If I need to check the temperature, I'll have maybe a ThermoWorks Dot or something cheap. I mean, they've sent me other nicer units. I use that Dot and I use that Thermopop more than anything else, like the cheaper stuff. And it's easy. Yeah.
But what happens is, and I've seen this with some of the different brands, you Green Mountain or Camp Chef, they don't have a Wi-Fi, unit. And then you got somebody like Rectech that comes out with one, and it takes them 2 years to develop their own. They're like, I guess I have to come out. Weber, I mean, they never had a pellet grill.
The pellet grill, that's
and
right.
They felt compelled to come out with a pellet grill, and with that pellet grill, they wanted it to have the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So now, instead of just a grill manufacturing company, they have to have somebody develop the software for the app and all kinds of electronics that they're not used to doing. I mean,
well, you mentioned Masterbuilt. I mean, geez Louise, like, and I had to say this real quick. Masterbuilt's gravity-fed units are sold at a price point that's affordable for most people. And you go on some of these forums and stuff, and you see people are like, this one part is like, starting to wear off, or this one thing's like, you paid $500 for this thing, and It does a great job for a $500 grill. It does the work of at least a grill that's $700 or $800. I mean, they put a lot of, like, 3 years of development into how this thing's going to map out. And I don't know, man. I got little patience for people that want to pick at stuff like that.
But you'll get crazy. That they'll buy a $100 grill and they'll do the same thing. I mean,
you're right.
People will complain. I got people where I actually I have this thing called the grill gun, and when it was under development, I hooked up with the owner, and I love the thing, and it's a little pricey. It's over $100. But the thing is, it's got everything built into it, and it's a high quality product. And I get people go, oh, you can go to Harbor Freight and get their weed burner, and it's the same thing for $30. It's like, it's okay. It does the same thing. It's like saying a Pinto is the same as a Mercedes Benz.
That's right.
It's not. They both drive. They both have wheels, and they both drive, but they're totally different things. And that's one of you're always going to get that. I mean, you get it in everything. You get that in cars. You get that in how everything. But barbecue, it's the same way. People will complain, they will, the biggest people, the branders. I hate the branders, Big Green Egg is it, I got, Kamado Joe socks, it's the Ford versus Chevy people.
Yeah.
Traeger is the best grill in the world.
Look, I've seen cases. No, don't get me, Darren. I've seen cases where people have had brand names or even hashtags tattooed on their bodies.
I know, it's crazy.
At that point, you may need to seek mental assistance. Like, go to a doctor and figure out why you made that life choice, because something's wrong.
I like I like I said before, I like all different kinds of cookers, and
Yeah.
I can see, you know, the benefits and you know the bad things of everything. Nothing's perfect, and I love the people that go, you got to get this is the only grill you can have. That's it, nothing else. And it's like, man,
Yeah.
you're wow. Do you do that same thing with food? I can only eat
Exactly.
a hamburger with, you know, mayonnaise on it. You know,
That's right.
I'm just never been that way, and it just
Nope.
blows my mind when people get that way. Well,
Yeah.
Kevin, it's been great having you on. I don't want to keep you all night. We could probably sit here and talk for another
We
3 or 4
could, and
hours.
I really appreciate you taking the time. If you can give me a second, I would like to kind of talk to some
Definitely.
of my sponsors and show them a little love. Definitely have to talk with with everyone here real quick about the good work and the educational opportunities that are out there with Barbecue Champs Academy, barbecuechamps.com. Those guys, those classes are amazing. Some of the biggest and best names in barbecue and steak grilling are out there. Definitely give them a look. See,
I'm actually having Mike on Monday. We're going to do a
Mike's
record,
great.
so he's going to be on my
Yep, yep.
podcast. We're going to
You'll
talk
love it.
about that.
It's awesome, and it's all just he'll guys. Look, if you've ever been to a class and you've had a hard time remembering everything that was told to you over the last couple of days of the class, and you're like, oh wait, my notes weren't good enough, or I got distracted. You don't have that with any of these classes. They're very well priced, affordable, and you can scroll through and go to each segment and find just what you need. If you miss something, it's really great. Also, cookingpellets.com, Chris and those guys. I've used Cooking Pellets brand pellets for my pellet smokers for ever now. I've had zero need to go anywhere else, and they've been great friends of my show, and I highly recommend you check them out. Amazon almost always has them on Prime. There's nothing like getting a 40-pound bag of pellets shipped right to your door for free. Well, shipping free, and the price is right. So check those out. And then last but not least, if you have cast iron, anything that you cook on, you gotta give some love to Crisbee Cast Iron Seasoning Products. It's a CRISBEE, Crisbee Puck on Instagram. It's amazing. They formulated a blend of all natural ingredients that you know do what you need to do to season and protect your cast iron stuff. And I don't know, Darren, if you've ever messed around with trying to season cast iron and had
I've
bad
actually gotten
experiences.
I've gotten rid of the cast iron grates on my
Yeah.
Kamado cookers because I just couldn't keep the rust off of them. So
Yeah, Crisbee will save that from ever happening.
especially
It's
here in
amazing.
Florida because it's so humid all the
Humid.
time.
Oh yeah,
I was actually telling somebody the other day that I stopped getting cast iron grates on any of my grills because in Florida it's just so humid you
it's tough.
can't keep up with them. So
Yep. So yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to those guys, and then also podcast love, right? So the Pit Pastor podcast, guys, if you like barbecue, check out those guys. Anthony and Rusty do a great job. Also, Smoking Hot Confessions out of Australia. Ben is just top notch, does great work, and keep showing Darren here some love, guys. He's doing great work. Darren, I love. We didn't even really get to talk about it. When I have you on my show, I'm going to dig deeper into the sous vide world
yeah,
and
definitely.
how we can really expand, because I love what you're doing, bro. I love that you're helping people find new and interesting ways to impart flavors and textures and things to their food. So yeah, it's been a blast. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
I'm really appreciate you being on, but yeah, getting back to that though, and that's kind of what the brand people kind of reminds me of. The people that say you can only eat barbecue if it's this way. I've never been somebody that locks myself into a cooking method. I love cooking barbecue, straight barbecue, but I also like experimenting with my
Yeah,
cooking.
yeah,
And I think that's how you grow and learn. That's why I like
absolutely.
watching a lot of these food, shows on Netflix and stuff where you
Hmm.
go around the world and see how people
Yeah,
make,
like Ugly Delicious and all those shows
yeah,
are
how
just
they can take
great. Yeah,
chicken, they take chicken and they can cook it a million different ways and it'd be
yeah,
different. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I want people to understand. And yeah, I think you have that in everything. Like I said, people get locked in. You
yeah.
can only do something a certain way, and I've never been that way. And I like experimenting, exploring. And there's a lot of people out there like me and you that do the same thing. But
I
thanks again,
agree.
Kevin. I really appreciate it. And make sure everybody check out Barbecue Beat, the website, the podcast, the blog, and give Kevin some love. He's been doing this a while. He's got some great episodes. He's been around a lot longer than me, and hopefully I'll be on this podcast soon. He can pick my brain a little bit. Thanks
I
again,
love
Kevin.
to. I love to do it, man. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. And make sure you follow us on the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast, YouTube channel, Facebook groups, and I'll see you on the next episode. I want to thank Kevin from Barbecue Beat for being on. This episode has been brought to you by Fresh Jack's Organic Spices. Make sure you check them out in the link below. You can also check them out on my Amazon store. Fresh Jack's is some of the freshest, best spices you'll ever have. They have some great seasoning blends, and they also have just the straight up spices that you can get from them. Check them out, guys. Make sure you follow us on the Fire and Water Cooking YouTube channel, Facebook group and page, and make sure you keep watching and following the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. See you on the next one.